Righty, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time for us to have a bit of a discussion today about how the new TOA is designed. I previously released a video already where I've described that the new TOA reset for version 2.7, specifically floors 3 and 4, has gotten a lot more achievable. HP on the mods has definitely either been lowered or the defense has been lowered, something along those lines to make it so that even the most free-to-play teams of 1.0 are having a very comfortable time clearing with plenty of time remaining. And the situation that I wanted to talk about over here was some of the additional balancing levers that Kuro Games has decided to implement in the game mode. And this one is actually going to be pretty damn interesting. This third bar over here. Upon inflicting negative statuses on an enemy, defense is increased by 10% and attack is increased by 10% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So a lot of individuals, when they looked at this bar or this effect over here, much like myself, thought that this was going to be a buff for teams that use negative statuses. Thought that, oh, when you use negative statuses, your attack, your defense, they're all going to go up. It's going to be fantastic. But the end result, the actual reality of this, ladies and gentlemen, this actually buffs the enemies. This actually gives the enemies a 10% defense buff, a 10% attack buff. They end up dealing more damage and they end up being tankier. If you're somebody that's deciding to use characters, right, that are a little bit like this. But there's one reality about this TOA, and there's one reality about these negative status effects. It doesn't actually matter at all. The TOA just seems to me to be balanced enough to a degree where even though this looks like a heavy burden, this looks like it's going to be a major issue for teams that are using those status effects, it doesn't really have much of an impact at all. And what better way to prove that than to actually just use the teams that employ status effects on these floors? So without further ado, let me just go ahead and show you all what well, let's just be honest here, what one status effect team is going to be doing against this floor. And so we're just going to be using a simple lineup of Ciaccona, Iuno, and Jiyan. And one reality about this team is the fact that Ciaccona applies arrow erosion on pretty much every single one of her attacks. So we can guarantee that this debuff for us that buffs the enemy is going to be in full play. And we'll just see what the results actually look like when you use a team like this. And then, of course, don't worry, we'll make sure to move on to some other alternatives so you can see what the difference in the clear time actually looks like. Alrighty, here we go.
Mind the tempo.
So do keep in mind that this is the third floor. And there are going to be some enemies that are arrow resistant.
My call. On you go. Well, at my string.
You're wide open.
And this team, it does pretty good.
Don't you worry.
When you're not getting knocked around like that.
Thanks for watching.
Unfortunately, our grouping on these is really bad.
Finale. Now watch closely. Bow before me. The moon is full. On you go. Well, at my strength.
But you'll probably notice the run is going pretty fine.
Fear no more.
However, you're noticing, right? My Jiyan isn't doing that much damage. He has a 35% crit buff over here, but each of these ticks is only doing 10k. This isn't because he's badly built or anything like that, but I want you to pay close attention to that 10k number. Because we'll be doing another team that isn't deploying any negative status effects at all, and then show you what the difference is looking like.
I'll indulge you. On you go. Taste my resolve. Entertain me. Foe, be my prey. Faith.
Ready for battle. Unstoppable.
Revealed.
And naturally, as the stage advances in time, we're starting to do more damage. That's because there's a ramping buff, right? Where the longer the fight goes,
Thanks for watching.
the more damage your characters end up dealing.
Grand overture. A perfect chord. Faster. Now presenting a poem of finale with style and grace. sir. My call.
And so the main thing that you'll notice over here is that, you know what, our time is looking pretty decent. But you likely have already gotten faster clears in other TOAs, other floors 3 and 4s, using a team like this. And the reasoning is pretty simple. That's because that defense buff, ladies and gentlemen, is applying to the enemies when you use a lineup like this. But these teams are sufficient enough to operate through the debuffs and still get a very, very, very comfortable clear. Because you saw I was getting thrown around a lot. I didn't really have that great grouping, especially on the arrow-resistant enemies we're going against. Keep that in mind. We had a wave of arrow-resistant enemies using the full arrow team, and we still ended up with a very easy clear. Now, let's do a bit of a comparison. Let's see what it looks like when we're using this lineup that features no arrow erosion, no negative statuses that can increase the defense of the enemy, and you'll see, well, how this team actually performs. This is also a very budget 1.x Mortefi's on Moonlit Clouds, like bro's a 4-star unit,
I have experiments.
all of that jazz. So let's just get him a set, make sure he actually has stuff equipped. He's gonna be on Static Mist R3. I know that's that's still relatively achievable. And we'll just go again using this lineup. And then I'll show you the damage difference in what our Jiyan's actually doing. And it'll be, well, I'll let that speak for itself.
Stay calm, okay?
Inferno!
Lion graft you knew.
Fury boils! Feel my wrath! Let's do it. Ready for battle. Fear no more.
So right off the bat, you're seeing that my Jiyan is dealing about, well, 5k more damage at the very start of the rotation, right? We still got a bit of a grouping error over here, but that's about 5k more damage, immediately doing 10k on some of the mobs.
As you wish.
Loading. In war with time.
And that's how much of an impact
Fury
that
boils.
debuff is having.
Burn to ashes.
That 30% defense increase. And when you actually don't have it active, well, the end result is you deal way more damage. Yep, you're seeing a 15k over here when we were at 10k. We were at 10k.
Inferno.
Loading.
In the prior run.
Modulation.
Fury boils. Feel my wrath. Let's do your wide open this another way. Unstoppable.
And now you see that as the buffs are ramping up, we're getting close to 17k, right? We'll hit 20k really soon.
Oh, from the
And you're
heart.
noticing, oh, look,
Worry not.
these clear times
As you wish.
are looking really similar.
Graft you knew.
Some could even dare say, right,
Burn to ashes.
that this team is actually a little bit faster.
Ready for battle. Fear no more.
And it's not surprising at all when you're seeing just how much more damage it's actually capable of.
Ordained.
Because we don't have to deal with that debuff.
Diminish. Loading. In war with time.
Fury boils. Inferno. Silence. Let's do your wide open another way. Unstoppable.
And naturally, right, there are some more optimizations we could have made over there. But what's clear is that the relative performance of these teams is super similar. But there's a truth to the matter, right? This team is Jiyan's premium team. When you use this team, you deal way more damage than the Shorekeeper Mortefi team, because this team synergizes together perfectly. However, that team is getting similar results to using his free-to-play one, simply from the perspective of, oh, these negative statuses are now applying a buff to the enemy and increasing their defense massively, right? And I would dare say that this just doesn't really... This is a kind of update. This is a kind of change that I personally think isn't the best for the game, right? I don't think that we should be in the mindset of intentionally nerfing certain lineups to, you know, account for the fact that they might be either too strong or, like, you know, other teams aren't at the same level. But it's fair to say that whatever Kuro Games did wasn't to the degree of what we've seen in other games. Think your Hoyoverse titles. Think your Genshin Impacts. Think your Honkai Star Rails. Think your ZZZs. Those games have mechanics where they just outright say, you cannot use this archetype. You cannot use Super Break against this boss because he has no break bar. You cannot use anomaly units against this deadly assault boss because it has 50% slower buildup. You can't use your Mavawika against the Pyro Lecter because he has a Pyro shield and she won't do any damage to him. She literally can't deal any damage to him, right? That is what I could consider to be very unhealthy sort of restrictions. And with Kuro's implementation over here, there are some restrictions, right? There are some disadvantages that you'll have from using your Phoebe Absolution team, your Cartethyia team, all of that. You'll have some disadvantages, but it's not to the degree where you can't clear. And I think that's the main focus. It puts a bit of a hamper. It makes your clear time slower by maybe 10, 20, 30 seconds. It is going to be something that probably annoys a fair number of players, but it isn't something that, well, if you had a built team that was using these negative statuses before, it isn't something that's a barrier at all to your clear times. And what better way to prove that than to just use the classic team that everyone's going to use when it comes to applying negative status effects. And this is also what I'll do, ladies and gentlemen. I've been keeping Blood Pack's pledge at R3. We'll just raise it to R5 for this one. Because, you know, this is the relatable thing to do now, right? This is the relatable thing to do nowadays. Fuck it. We'll even activate their sequence node. There you go. And we'll run ARover alongside Ciaccona and Cartethyia. Just to see, all right, how does it feel?
I am the Tempest! The wicked will face
Thanks for watching.
judgment!
Master. Let the show begin. Such is their blessing.
As you can see, not really that big of a deal, right?
Repent, for silence beckons.
Torrents, rage on. Sounding the death knell, vexing malice. My blade.
Not really that big of a deal, is it?
Purge all evil.
Even into some of the arrow-resistant mobs over here, they're still kind of getting cooked.
Wind calls, waves follow. Wind howls, unfettered by bounds. The wicked, wind rises.
Oh, I messed up too. Okay, I griefed the rotation as well. Give me a second over here.
The wicked will
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, we'll just subtract about like a second or two. Yeah, that was a bit of a mistake there. Misinput. It's fine though.
Perish. Be gone, wicked souls. Such as oceans. Bow before me. Sentence before. Tide, rise and crash. March on. Furious tides. Split the heavens.
wind calls, waves follow. Tempest of slashes. Keep it together. Waves rise. Judgment strikes. The wicked will face
Thanks for watching.
judgment.
Perfect. Let the show begin. Collapse. Such is their blessing. Heavens descend. True form revealed at last. Torrents rage on. Sounding the death knell. Quietus. Windstorm. Sweep on.
And I mean, yeah, as you can see, right? This team really doesn't have any struggles at all, but it's not gonna have like the same maybe
I,
clear time that you're used to using it before.
the wicked, will face
Thanks for watching.
judgment.
But is it really like that much of a concern
Overture.
when, well,
It's called.
you're still clearing with 30-something seconds left? And of course, right, we had a couple of fumbles with ARover's rotation before, but the reality genuinely is, ladies and gentlemen, if you're using these negative status effect teams, this debuff is not strong enough to prevent you from clearing if you were already clearing before. However, if you're maybe in a situation where you don't have a Ciaccona, you have like a Sanhua only, right? You don't have Ciaccona's weapon, or you only have like an Emerald of Genesis instead of Cartethyia signature, then that's a situation where you're probably going to have some issues. Right? That's a situation where maybe you don't clear unless you have the full premium lineup. And in that case, right, well, the reality of the situation is 1.0 units are absolutely wiping the game mode right now, right? I could just go ahead. I can slot in the worst team in the game. I can slot in mathematically the weakest premium team in the game and get clears, right? And when that's the solution that we have available is pretty much every single old unit, I think even ARover easy clears as well, the free unit, let's just be honest, every single person has the tools that they need in the TOA to get a 3-star clear, especially on these floors. And I would dare say the only barrier that currently exists in this reset is actually dealing with this bastard Hikari in the first stage, because there are just some units, there are just some rotations, right, where she feels like an absolute nightmare because of how often she moves. Range units have an easy time with her. She's an absolute joke. And I don't think these floors are much of an issue either. Because even if you're using an unfavored damage type, I'm just going to be real, man, it's not really that significant if you already had lineups that were clearing. But it does set a precedent. It does, without a doubt, set a precedent. That Kuro Games is currently adding in debuffs to specific archetypes into the TOA. And as long as they're kept to a relatively minor degree like this one, that don't heavily reduce the viability of units and make them feel unplayable, then I don't think it's that big of a deal, right? Because you're clearly not using Cartethyia anyways in floor 4, right? Elemental restrictions are already enough, or attribute restrictions are already enough, in my opinion, to dictate whether or not a character is viable. I'm never going to use the Ciaccona Cartethyia team. I'm never going to use the Iuno Jiyan team against this, because I'll have no chance of clearing. And so in that situation, right, this tagline basically means nothing at all, because I wasn't going to use negative status characters anyways. And so I hope that they keep whatever effects like these are. I just hope they keep them on the down low. I just hope that it doesn't end up burgeoning, right, to like 20%. And if you just end up using a negative status character, it's just like, I hope you have sequence nodes, otherwise you can't clear, and that it doesn't get much more crazy than this. One thing that's for certain is that Kuro has been able to easily identify when buffs are too restrictive, when buffs don't feel good, and they always come out with better versions of them, right? And this is one of the big examples of a buff that, you know, didn't necessarily feel that great the first time it showed up in the TOA, right? And then in the second iteration of the new TOA, this one, they've improved it significantly. Let me just show you all what the From 2 is in this situation over here. This is what the old floor 3 buff was. Casting Resonance Liberation grants a shield of 3k HP. It's triggered once every 4 seconds. Shielded Resonators take 10% less damage, and their total damage is increased by 16% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. The new version, when Resonators cast a Liberation, obtain a 3k HP shield with no cooldown. Upon obtaining the shield, attribute damage is increased by 10%, and attack is increased by 12% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So it has the same number of effects, or it has the same amount of stacking bonuses, but it lasts 4 seconds longer, and they remove the cooldown on re-triggering the shield. That, and they made the buff more offensive as well, so it gives bigger damage bonuses. So that's the amount of improvement. That is the progression that they made in one TOA reset to ensure that this buff feels a lot better to use, that more characters are able to activate it and have more uptime on its effect. And I think the reality of the situation is that I don't think this is going overboard. I don't think this is breaking the game. I don't think this is breaking any teams. I don't think it's an issue at all. However, if it gets worse, then we have a bit of an issue. I like that. I like a degree of this, right? Where it encourages you to use some of your older teams, your older lineups that don't feature these status effects. But I also don't like the whole like pigeonholing that we can see going on where, hey, who was just on banner last phase? It was Ciaccona. And now we have a TOA debuff that makes it so that you're incentivized not to use Ciaccona. You can still use her and you'll still clear it, it's no issue, but then that sort of like lingering thing is still there. And to me, that is a bit more Hoyoversy, that's a bit more ZZZE, that's a bit more Genshin-y, and a bit more HSR-y than I would like. But I'm not going to be out here and telling you that, oh, if you use Cartethyia, you won't clear. If you use Ciaccona, you won't clear. If you use Phoebe, you won't clear. If you use ARover, you won't clear. Because you can easily clear using any of those units. It's a balanced TOA. Where, again, they've either brought the HP totals down, they've reduced the defense, something along those lines, because you're still getting absolutely fine results out of the entire thing. So, yeah, I think that Kuro Games has definitely, again, done a great job with this iteration of the TOA. And I think they've also not pushed the boundaries too much with this buff. And hopefully those gameplay demos, the demonstrations, seeing the progression they've made, has, you know, put a little bit more of a positive spin on the updates that they're making. Because, again, until it goes crazy, I don't think we need to freak out about it. But the second it goes crazy, and the second that these restrictions seem too much, don't worry, we'll be there, and we will be farming it. So yeah, that'll be that for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.